Adil Ray in for Tony Livesey. Now, should you rent or buy your house? You're over £100 a month better off with a mortgage than renting the average property in the UK, according to new research from the Halifax. Are you trying to get on the housing ladder? It sounds like it should be easier given those figures, but what's the reality? Give us your stories tonight. Maybe you're renting and desperate to buy but can't get a mortgage or raise a deposit. Or is renting the best option for you? I'd love to hear your experiences tonight. Call me 0500 909 693 or you can text 85058. We'll hear from our guests shortly, but first, 5 Live Money's Adam Kirtley is here. Hi, Adam.
A very good evening to you, Adil.
You've got a money minute for me.
I have. Adil, according to the Halifax, it is now over £100 a month on average cheaper to buy than rent for first-time buyers. Average costs, including mortgage payments and the loss of interest on savings because you've cashed them all in for a deposit, is now £567 a month, whereas the average rent is £677. Now, back in 2008, when interest rates were higher, you needed £212 more to buy than rent the same two-bedroom flat, which is what they've used as a measure. Mortgages are way cheaper as interest rates have plummeted and as house prices have fallen back. So has the amount put down as a deposit. So costs have fallen 40%. Whereas rent has only fallen 6% since 2008. So should you buy? Well, if you can get a mortgage and find a house or flat, maybe. But getting a mortgage isn't that easy. According to the Council for Mortgage Lenders, the number of first-time buyers has dropped by almost a quarter since 2008. So yes, buy if you can and if you want to.
That wasn't bad. I think that was banging a minute. Well done. Did you rehearse that a few times?
Well,
stay with me, Adam, because I think I'm going to need you over the next few minutes. Robert Reid is with me. He's an estate agent in Cheshire. Hi, Robert.
Good evening.
And also Jonathan Davis is an economist and wealth manager. Hi, Jonathan.
Hello, Adil.
Jonathan, let me come to you first. So it sounds like rents are going through the roof and we can save money long term by getting on the property ladder.
I've absolutely no idea where you get this. It sounds like rents are going through the roof.
Well,
that's an extrapolation which no one has mentioned. And what the Halifax has said is that rents haven't fallen, and I would agree with that. As it happens, anyone who looks back at rents for the last 5 or 10 years, they will see that they have not moved up at all in 5 or 10 years. And I think that's indicative that they're not going to rise going forward. In fact, they're going to fall along with house prices.
Robert?
Well, I think he's wrong. I think if you look at let's say 5-year 10 trend is a different thing to what you were asking, which is about rents in the current market, and they're definitely going up. There is a lot of demand for rents and there's not enough supply. So prices on the rental are going up without question, and that's in most areas.
That's simply not true.
Well, it is. I mean, it actually is. It's absolutely... I can only look at the business I operate in, and quite clearly there are some houses that you tend to re-rent them every 6-12 months because circumstances change, and there's no question that landlords are able to command a better rent at the moment than they were probably 12 months ago.
Let's move forward. We can agree or disagree. Let's move forward. I'm saying that people shouldn't be touching property with a barge pole, because although the Halifax here is, I'm not disputing that paying a mortgage may well be cheaper than renting at the moment. They, of course, are in the business of flogging mortgages. Therefore, they're trying to push people to take mortgages. The reality is that people need to understand the economics. And the economics are that interest rates cannot go any lower than they are. Lending is not going to get any easier because the banks are technically insolvent. Public sector is being hammered. Aggregate income is not rising, and yet the cost of living is. Countries are going bankrupt. We need to realise that the economy is dire. Okay. And on that basis, I do not see house prices any higher at the end of the decade than today.
OK, Jonathan, if you look at the case of interest rates, and that's quite true, though. It's been stable for now, the interest rate, but that is likely to go. It's got to go up at some point. Yeah. So very dangerous, isn't it, to start buying a property now and then within 2 years realising you can no longer afford that mortgage.
Yeah, it's all about, in my opinion, sensible forecasting, because quite clearly interest rates will go up. I mean, obviously that is correct, and I think it's budgeting that at the beginning, or looking at the other way at fixed price, fixed loan deals. So, for example, albeit you need a very large deposit, probably 25-30%, some people are fixing now for 10 years, say 4%, which in historical terms is a very, very good way of doing it.
Yes,
and also,
a lot of people did
and also
that in Ireland as well.
Hold on, Jonathan. Let Robert carry on.
And that doesn't, to kind of answer Jonathan's concern, and we'll put it like that, I think that does help significantly in budgeting and forecasting. People say, actually, my outgoing is going to be this for a prolonged period of time. And the only thing you can say in terms of guarantees over a 10-year period, Jonathan may or may not be correct that properties won't rise for 10 years. I actually think they will have risen in 10 years. But one thing you can be sure about, I'm not anti-renting. Renting can be very, very good and appropriate for a certain time of life, and I'm all for it. But if you're taking over a 10-year period, you know your rent's not going to come back to you. That is dead money, it's gone. There is a chance, not an inevitability, but there is a chance that property will go up. And I think if you look at the fundamentals of the economy and look at housing stock, it probably will. So I think that's where I would disagree with Jonathan.
OK, I want to hear from people at home here. We've got two people in the studio here who are very, very clear about what they think about, let's say, the rental situation. I want to hear from you. Has rent gone up for you? Are you finding it difficult to rent? Would you rather buy, and what's stopping you doing that? Or have you managed to buy? Have you managed to do it? 0500 909 693. Jonathan, so when do you believe it's going to be the right time to buy? I mean, how long do we have to wait?
Well, obviously, I'm only talking from a financial point of view. I certainly wouldn't touch it for the next couple of years.
But my point is, whenever you buy, the whole idea of borrowing, there's a certain risk factor all the time, isn't there? I mean, we know that when you buy a house, you're told that your house is at risk. There is always a risk, isn't there? And simply what Halifax are saying right now at this moment in time, it could be a better option. It's not probably saying for everybody, but it could be, and it's certainly worth looking into, isn't it?
I'm not suggesting it's not worth looking into. I'm saying that what they don't say in this survey is that although the monthly cost may well be lower, as I'm not disputing it, than renting, they're not taking into account capital losses. They themselves have said that first-time prices have fallen 14% in the last 3 years. The Land Registry says that prices are down a couple of percent in the last year, with the lowest interest rate in history. In Northern Ireland, they're down 47%. In the Northeast, they're down 9% over the last year, and I could go on.
Okay.
In London, they've gone up there, haven't they?
But one thing, actually...
Actually, they've gone down 2% last year.
Hold on, Jonathan. But one thing, though... sorry, Adam, do you want to come in there?
Well, no, I just... Because, of course, there are all two sides to the story, but, I mean, there are lies, damn lies and statistics, and you can prove anything one way or the other. But, I mean, there are conflicting evidences. So I think, in a way, you're both right and you're both wrong. You could say, you could quote certain figures that thinks that rents will go up by 19.8% in just 5 years. House prices will go up 21.3% in the same period. You get another pressure is that there are 4.5 million people on the social housing waiting list. So that's not an option. And therefore, the demand for rented properties, many would say, is going to continue to increase. Yeah. On the mortgage front, yes, of course, the base rate at 0.5% can't stay there forever. But I think it's virtually historically unknown, I think, for a 10-year fix, which I think was the Chelsea Building Society, a 10-year fix at 3.99%. Does build a huge amount of stability into your forward planning.
But one thing they did miss out, though, didn't they, on it, which I couldn't believe in this research, it didn't account for the deposit.
Yeah.
I mean, how you can say...
27,000 on average, which is a lot of money for a first-time buyer.
Yeah, it's going to cost you £100 less, but as long as you've got your £15,000-20,000 deposit. Is it getting any easier for people to buy a mortgage without having a bigger deposit, Robert?
I mean, the key thing is deposit, and you are absolutely right to say that. And I know a lot of people are actually going into rental, so that it's the only way they can actually save some money, even though they're spending out £550 every month. It gives them a chance to maybe save 100 or 200, and every 100 counts. And I think that's where, the only plus side. So it's harder to get a mortgage because you need that deposit. But the only sensible thing is, and I think it is sensible, the higher the level of equity, on the whole, the more reasonable the deal on the percentage.
Okay.
And I think that is a sensible principle, and just slightly conflicts with what Jonathan said at the beginning.
Jonathan, I will come back to you, but I just want to take this call. Chris is in Manchester. Hi, Chris.
Hello there.
How are you? Are you renting or buying?
I'm renting, from what we call council housing, which has now become known as social housing, yes.
Right, and is that how is that working out for you? Would you rather be out buying your own property?
No, well, I've always rented, from the council. When I lived with my parents, obviously, when I was born in the 1940s, they rented. Then in the 1950s, I was married in the 1960s, and I've always been in rented property, and I've never found anything untoward about that. But I'm flabbergasted at the amount of rents that you're talking about earlier on in your programme. £600 odd a month is absolutely flabbergasting to me. Our rents are nowhere near that in the social housing
And that's
sector.
the problem, though, Adil, is that you raise a really good point there, because there are 4.5 million people waiting for the sort of affordable housing that you are renting, and that's why private rents are shooting up.
Well, maybe so, but the other thing is, the other, if you like, flip the coin over, with these riots, which I found out, and I've noticed this all my life, people in social housing get looked down upon as if there's some type of pariah, that because if you like, and I've heard the Prime Minister say this, I've heard other people say it, we're being subsidised. And I found this as a child when I first went to grammar school. One of the boys said to me, my father says, he's paying your rent. And I went home and asked my dad, and blah, 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 as it were. And I've practically had a fight with him because, all my life I've hated this kind of system. And now I find it, in the riots, people who are in the houses could be turfed out of the houses. No. What happens to these people who are paying big rents? Do they not get turfed out of the houses?
Chris,
are they looked on as better people?
Chris, you make your point very well. Thank you very much. Chris in Manchester. We'll keep our guests with us, Jonathan and Roberts. Do call in 0500 909 693. How are you finding the housing market? You're renting or buying, and is it working out for you?